The year is 260 AD. For over 2 centuries, the Roman Empire has stood unchallenged on the Rhine. Forts and watchtowers line the river. Legions patrol the frontier. Peace and prosperity have reigned across the Swiss Plateau. But everything is about to change. Deep in the forests beyond the Rhine, a confederation of Germanic tribes has gathered. They called themselves the Alemanni, a name that may have meant all men, perhaps a coalition of many different tribes, and they have waited generations for this moment. The Roman Empire is weak. Civil war rages. Emperors rise and fall in rapid succession. Legions have been pulled from the frontier to fight for the throne. The Alemanni see their chance. They cross the Rhine not as raiders, but as conquerors. They sweep through the Roman frontier defenses, burning forts and looting cities. Augusta Raurica is attacked and severely damaged. Aventicum is attacked. Vias across the countryside go up in flames. By the time the smoke clears, the Roman frontier has collapsed. The Limes, Rome's fortified border, lies in ruins. The province has changed forever. This is the story of the 260 AD Alemanni invasion, the day the Roman Limes collapsed. The Alemanni were not a single tribe, but a confederation of various Germanic peoples. They called themselves the Alemanni, a name that may have meant all men, perhaps indicating that they were a conglomeration drawn from different tribes. They first appear in Roman records in 213 AD, when the Emperor Caracalla campaigned against them in the main river basin. The Roman historian Cassius Dio describes them as victims of Caracalla's treachery. They had asked for his help, but instead he colonized their land and executed many of their warriors according to Roman sources. From that point on, relations between Rome and the Alemanni became increasingly hostile. They lived in what is now southwestern Germany, between the main river and the Danube. Their territory bordered the Roman province of Germania Superia, separated only by the Rhine frontier. Archaeological evidence shows that the Alemanni were not simply barbarians. They were largely Romanized, living in Roman-style houses and using Roman artifacts. Alemannic women adopted the Roman fashion of the tunic even earlier than the men, but they remained fiercely independent, and they wanted Roman land. To understand the invasion of 260 AD, you must first understand the Limes. The Limes was Rome's fortified frontier, a system of walls, watchtowers, and forts stretching hundreds of miles. In Germany, it ran from the Rhine to the Danube, protecting the Roman provinces of Germania Superia and Rhaetia. Under the Flavian emperors in the late 1st century AD, the Romans had pushed their control into the Black Forest region, the Agri Decumates. By the time of Hadrian 117-138 AD, a continuous palisade ran more than 300 miles across the angle between the two rivers. For over a century, this system worked. The frontier held, the province prospered, but by the mid-3rd century, the pressure was becoming unbearable. Germanic tribes pressed against the frontier from the north and east. The Roman army, stretched thin across a vast empire, struggled to respond. And then came the crisis of the 3rd century. The crisis of the 3rd century was one of the darkest periods in Roman history. Between 235 and 284 AD, the Roman Empire nearly collapsed. There were at least 26 emperors, most of them lasting only months before being murdered or overthrown. Civil war raged continuously. The economy spiraled into chaos. Inflation soared. Trade collapsed. The frontiers, stripped of troops to fight in civil wars, became dangerously vulnerable. Barbarian tribes, Goths, Franks, and Alemanni, saw their opportunity and attacked on multiple fronts simultaneously. In the east, the Persians captured the Emperor Valerian in 260 AD, a humiliation Rome had not suffered in centuries. In the west, the Gallic Empire broke away under the usurper Postumus. For the Alemanni watching from beyond the Rhine, the moment had arrived. The exact date of the Alemanni invasion is debated by historians. Some place it in 259 AD, others in 260 AD. What is certain is that in these years, a massive Germanic force crossed the Rhine and swept through the Roman provinces. Ancient sources claim the force numbered 300,000 warriors, though modern historians believe the real number was far smaller. The Alemanni first struck the Agri Decumates, the Roman-controlled lands between the Rhine and Danube. The Limes, undermanned and unprepared, collapsed almost immediately. Watchtowers were abandoned, forts were burned. The Roman population fled in terror. From there, the Alemanni divided into multiple columns. One column swept south into Raetia, attacking the cities of Cambodonum and Brigantium Brahe on Lake Constance. Another column crossed the Rhine near Basel and struck directly at the heart of Roman Switzerland. Augusta Raurica, Switzerland's oldest Roman colony, lay directly in the Alemanni's path. Archaeological evidence tells a grim story. Coins and hoards buried in haste have been found throughout the city, dating to precisely this period. Residents clearly had warning of the approaching danger and buried their valuables, hoping to return for them later. They never did. The city was attacked and severely damaged, marking the end of its golden age. The magnificent theatre, the temples, the public baths, all were damaged and partially abandoned. Many of the 20,000 inhabitants were killed or fled into the countryside. Some survivors may have found refuge in the Castrum Rauracense fortress built later, but Augusta Raurica as a prosperous urban centre never recovered. The golden age of the colony was over. From Augusta Raurica, the Alemanni columns fanned out across the Swiss Plateau. Aventicum, the capital of Roman Switzerland, was attacked. Though the city survived, it suffered significant damage. Coins and hoards from this period have been found throughout the region, evidence of the widespread panic. The luxurious Roman villa at Zofingen, with its magnificent mosaics, was abandoned around this time, never to be reoccupied. Other villas across the countryside show destruction layers dating to 260 AD. Funerary inscriptions from the period tell of Romans slain by barbarians. The victims included men, women and children, civilians caught in the path of the invasion. Throughout the land, people fled to fortified hilltops. At Wittnau in the Fricktal, a refuge fortress was built on the Wittnauer Horn, where local people could take shelter when danger threatened. Archaeologists have found valuable objects hidden there, more evidence of the fear that gripped the province. The Alemanni did not stop at the Swiss Plateau. According to historical sources, some columns pressed on, crossing the Alps into Italy itself. They may have crossed the Alps through passes such as the Great St. Bernard, the same route Roman armies had used for centuries. Descending into the Po Valley, they swept through northern Italy, plundering as they went. Their objective was Rome itself. The invasion caused panic throughout the peninsula. Cities hurriedly repaired their walls. The Emperor Gallienus, already fighting on multiple fronts, scrambled to assemble a response. The Alemanni reached as far as the outskirts of Rome before Roman forces could finally stop them. The decisive confrontation came near Mediolanum, modern Milan. The Roman commander was Gallienus, who had ruled as co-emperor with his father Valerian and now faced the crisis alone. Gathering whatever forces he could spare, he marched north to intercept the Alemanni returning from their raid. According to later sources, Gallienus had approximately 60,000 men. The Alemanni, laden with plunder and slowed by captives, were caught near Milan. The battle was savage. The Romans, fighting to defend their homeland, had the advantage of discipline and desperation. The Alemanni, exhausted from their long march and burdened with loot, were at a disadvantage. When the fighting ended, ancient writers claim enormous casualties among the Alemanni, though modern historians consider these numbers highly exaggerated. The survivors were driven back across the Alps. For the next decade, the Alemanni would not dare invade Italy again. While the main Alemanni force was defeated at Milan, other Germanic groups remained active. One such group were the Jutungi, a tribe closely related to the Alemanni. Returning from Italy laden with plunder and Roman captives, they were intercepted near Augsburg by the Roman governor of Raetia, a man named Simplicius Genialis. The battle was a Roman victory. Thousands of Roman citizens were freed from captivity. In 1992, archaeologists discovered the Augsburg Victory Altar, an inscription dedicated to the goddess Victoria after a Roman victory over the Jutungi in 260 AD. This discovery revolutionized our understanding of the period. Despite Roman victories in Italy and Raetia, the damage to the frontier was irreversible. The limes, the elaborate system of forts and walls that had protected the empire for over 150 years, had been breached and could not be restored. Roman forces were simply too few, and the threats too many. In the years following 260 AD, the Romans gradually abandoned the agri-decumates, the lands between the Rhine and Danube. The frontier was pulled back to the Rhine and Danube rivers themselves. The great Roman cities east of the Rhine, like Arrhae Flaviae, Rottweil, were completely abandoned. The Black Forest region, once a thriving part of the Roman province, became a no-man's land, gradually settled by the Alemanni in the decades that followed. This event is known to historians as the Limesfall, the fall of the limes. In Switzerland, the aftermath of the invasion was devastating. Augusta Raurica lay severely damaged, never to fully recover. Though a smaller settlement continued in the area, the great city's golden age was over. The theatre stood silent. The forum was partially abandoned. Grass grew over the once bustling streets. A Venticum survived but was permanently weakened. The capital never regained its former importance. Within decades, its population had dwindled and its magnificent buildings were already falling into ruin. Throughout the countryside, villas were abandoned. The Roman agricultural system, based on large estates worked by slaves and tenants, collapsed. Many areas were depopulated. The Romans attempted to maintain a presence. New fortifications were built, including the Castrum Roracens near Augusta Raurica, but the province had changed forever. For the Alemanni, the invasion of 260 AD was not just a raid, it was the beginning of a permanent settlement. In the decades following the Limesfall, Alemannic peoples gradually moved into the abandoned lands. They settled in the Black Forest region, along the Rhine, and into what is now northern Switzerland. Archaeological evidence shows a gradual transformation. Alemannic cemeteries appear in areas once thoroughly Roman. Germanic-style pottery replaces Roman wares. The language begins to shift. This was not a sudden replacement, but a slow process of migration and settlement. The Roman population did not entirely disappear. Many remained in fortified towns and along key routes, but the ethnic and cultural balance of the region was changing. By the 5th century, much of northern and eastern Switzerland would be Alemannic-speaking, the origin of modern Swiss German. One of the most striking pieces of evidence for the terror of 260 AD is the hoards, treasures buried by desperate people who never returned to reclaim them. All across Switzerland and southern Germany, archaeologists have found coins and valuables hidden in 260 AD. At Augusta Raurica, multiple coin hoards date to precisely this period. At the Roman fort at Niederbiber, destruction layers show the fort was destroyed in battle in 260. At Wettingen, a magnificent silver treasure was buried in 260 and not recovered until its discovery in 1633. These hoards tell a powerful story. People had warning of the danger. They gathered their most valuable possessions, coins, jewelry, family heirlooms, and buried them in the ground, hoping to return when the danger passed. They never did. The Alemanni invasion coincided with another momentous event, the fragmentation of the Roman Empire. In 260 AD, while Gallienus fought the Alemanni in Italy, the general Postumus declared himself emperor in Gaul. Supported by the provinces of Germania Superior and Rhaetia, he established what historians call the Gallic Empire, a breakaway state comprising Gaul, Britain, and Spain. For the next 14 years, the western provinces were effectively independent. Postumus established his capital at Cologne, minted his own coins, and maintained his own army. He successfully defended Gaul against further Germanic incursions, giving the region a measure of stability. The Gallic Empire was eventually reconquered by Aurelian in 274 AD, but its existence demonstrates how deeply the crisis had shaken Roman authority. The defeat at Milan did not end the Alemanni threat. Throughout the late 3rd and 4th centuries, they continued to press against the Roman frontier. In 268 AD, another massive Alemanni invasion struck Italy. According to ancient sources, they numbered over 300,000 warriors, certainly an exaggeration, and swept through the Po Valley. The Emperor Claudius the Sept Gothicus met them at Lake Binacus Gera and inflicted a crushing defeat, killing many thousands and driving the survivors back across the Alps. In 271 AD, the Alemanni tried again. This time, the Emperor Aurelian faced them in a series of 3 battles, first a defeat at Placentia, then a victory at Fano, and finally a decisive victory at Pavia that annihilated the remaining Alemanni forces. In 298 AD, the Alemanni invaded Gaul. besieging the city of Lingones, the Caesar Constantius Chlorats defeated them, killing many thousands according to the sources. And in 357 AD, the Alemanni faced their greatest defeat at the Battle of Strasbourg, where the future Emperor Julian destroyed their army and captured their king Cnodomar. Yet despite these defeats, the Alemanni remained. They had come to stay. One of the last major waves of migration into Roman Gaul came in 406 AD, when a coalition of Germanic tribes, Vandals, Alans and Suebi, crossed the Rhine. This time, there was no Roman recovery. The Western Empire, weakened by decades of crisis, could not expel the invaders. The Alemanni, like other Germanic peoples, settled permanently in the lands they had conquered. They occupied Alsace and much of northern Switzerland. The bishopric of Aventicum was abandoned, its bishop moving to Lausanne. Roman administration collapsed. By the mid-5th century, Alemannic settlements dotted the Swiss Plateau. The Roman era was over. In the centuries that followed, the Alemanni established a kingdom, Alemannia, stretching from the Vosges Mountains to the Lech River, including Alsace, Baden-Württemberg and much of Switzerland. Their independence was short-lived. In 496 AD, the Frankish king Clovis defeated them at the Battle of Tolbiac and incorporated them into his growing kingdom. According to Gregory of Tours, this battle led directly to Clovis's conversion to Christianity. The Alemanni revolted repeatedly against Frankish rule. In 746 AD, the Frankish mayor of the palace, Carloman, crushed an uprising and executed the entire Alemannic nobility at the blood court of Cannstatt. After this, Alemannia was ruled by Frankish dukes, but the people remained, and their language with them. The region where they settled still speaks Alemannic German dialects, in Swiss German, in Alsatian, in Swabian, and their name lives on. In French, Germany is Allemagne, in Spanish, Alemania, in Portuguese, Alemania, in Turkish, Almania, in Arabic, Raumbekdara. Today, the evidence of 260 AD lies buried beneath the soil of Switzerland. At Augusta Raurica, archaeologists continue to excavate the destruction layer, finding new evidence of the city's last days. The coins, the damaged buildings, the hastily abandoned homes all tell the same story. The silver treasure of Kaiser Augst, buried nearly a century later, shows that even after the initial invasion, life on the frontier remained dangerous. The officers who buried their wealth in 351 AD knew they might never return. The Augsburg Victory Altar, discovered in 1992, reminds us that for every tragedy there were also triumphs, moments when Roman arms still prevailed. And the landscape itself remembers. The hilltop refuges, the abandoned villas, the cemeteries where Alemanni buried their dead in what was once Roman land. The ground whispers of fire and flight, of hope and despair, of a world ending and another beginning. The year 260 AD was a turning point in Swiss history. Before that year, Switzerland was part of the Roman Empire, prosperous, peaceful and secure. After that year, everything was uncertain. The frontier had collapsed. The cities were severely damaged. A new people had arrived and would never leave. The Romans would attempt to hold on. Fortresses would be built. Emperors would campaign. But the old order was gone forever. In the centuries that followed, the Alemanni would settle, adapt, and eventually become part of the fabric of Switzerland. Their language would evolve into Swiss German. Their descendants would farm the same land their ancestors had conquered, and the name they gave themselves would echo through the ages. A reminder that Switzerland has always been a land of change, of peoples meeting and mixing, of old worlds dying and new ones being born. The Alemanni came as conquerors, they stayed as settlers, and in time they became Swiss. After the Alemanni invasion, the Roman world did not end overnight. In our next episode, we will explore the last Romans in Switzerland, the people who remained in their villas and towns after the empire had fallen. How did they live? How did they adapt? And what happened to them as the Germanic kingdoms took shape? Join us for part 9, The Last Romans in Switzerland, Villa Life after the empire fell.